with an update on the latest in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, regarding the locker room incident is our friend from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, Deputy Counsel Dan Lennington. Good morning, Dan. How are you?
Morning. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining me. So I wanted to get an update. I know that you had submitted, or I don't know if it's your client that submitted a open records request or a freedom of information request, and what was Sun Prairie's response?
Well, their response was pay us $11,000 or go away. This all stems from that March 3rd. So we're sitting here in May now. This is a March 3rd incident in which four freshman girls were confronted with a naked adult male in a shower. And what was troubling, apart from the actual incident, was the response of the school district, who would not clearly explain what their policy was. And it seemed to be a matter of safety, a matter of sexual harassment, a matter of girls' rights to be in a safe space. And that it was really unfortunate the school district couldn't even explain what their policy was. They had sort of multiple explanations and conflicting explanations. And finally, after about a month, the school district said something to the effect that a biological boy should never be in a state of undress in front of a biological female. However, biological males can go into the girls' locker room whenever they want. Basically, was the policy. They could be there, but they couldn't change. And we thought that was ridiculous. And so we sent, because they wouldn't give us a straight answer, they gave us this policy that had been sort of cobbled up after the fact, and it was totally contradictory because the district can't actually define what a boy and a girl is. And we asked for public records, and we said, okay, well, maybe we'll do this a different way. Instead of just asking you what your policy is, we'll ask you for the emails that the superintendent and the principal and the assistant principal exchanged in the days surrounding this March 3rd event. Seems pretty easy. I mean, you think about an event that maybe happened in your life or your listeners' lives, maybe on March 3rd, that was significant, and you'd say, well, can you go back and find the emails that relate to that incident on March 3rd? Well, it wouldn't be too hard, right? You just go into your Gmail and you'd look on what you sent and what you received on March 3rd, and anything related to that incident, you'd put in a folder and you'd give to whoever asked for it. Well, not so with Sun Prairie. Sun Prairie has told us that they require $11,000 in what are called location costs to find these emails that were sent or received around March 3rd. And what they do is they reveal something quite interesting, is that they say that the only people who can search these email boxes are the people who actually own the email boxes. So the superintendent can only search his own email box, and the principal can search her own email box, and that they have charged us their hourly rates. And here are the hourly rates for the superintendent, the principal, and the assistant principal. $131 an hour, $85 an hour, and $66 an hour. Now, apart from the ridiculousness that only a superintendent can search his own email outlook is kind of ridiculous, but the fact that Sun Prairie is paying the equivalent of $260,000 a year for salary and benefits for their superintendent in a school district where 60% of the kids can't do math or reading at grade level, tells you a lot about the state of our public education. And that's the problem that is not just in Sun Prairie, but it is statewide. I would say in most of the districts that are represented by your listeners right now, you're paying your superintendents probably over $200,000 a year, including pay and benefits, salary and benefits, and yet over half of your students are not reading at grade level or doing math at grade level. And so it really says a lot about our priorities. And teachers are right. When teachers say we need to pay our teachers more, we do need to pay our teachers more. The reason why we're not is because all this extra money that comes in every year is going to these administrators and their salary and benefits. And so I think that this issue of Sun Prairie not being transparent and not telling the public what their policy is on transgender students is really a reflection of a much larger problem about how we fund our public schools and how we run them, and whether they're accountable to the public who are actually supposed to be electing the school board members.
I think it's absurd that they claim that the superintendent, him or herself, and these other administrators have to search their sent boxes, their sent email boxes themselves. I have requested many public records requests over the years, and the communication that I have is usually with and even in the school district, the IT person, and the communication is never the subject of the request. And so for them to claim that it's only, it's actually kind of, I guess it says a lot about perhaps what they're trying to hide if they're claiming that it's only the superintendent that can only look at his or her inbox or sent box. It makes me wonder, what else is he or she trying to hide?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of my prior jobs was that I oversaw the Office of Open Government at the Department of Justice. And one of the things we did was we trained governments on how to respond to public records requests. And we have a manual, and it's very easy to figure out how to respond to a public records request. And one of the rules is that when you do location of records, you're supposed to use the cheapest person on your payroll. So we went on Sun Prairie's website and found that they pay their secretaries in their office $15 an hour. And for some reason, a secretary in an office is unable in Sun Prairie, doesn't have the skills or the education to be able to search someone's email for records that were sent or received around March 3rd, 2023.
What if there was a public records request on the secretary? How would she ever search her own inbox or her own sent email box? I mean, that's the level of absurdity you have to get to. And so how have you responded to the Sun Prairie School District?
Well, we sent them a letter back last week explaining what the law allows on location costs, and explained that they are charging way too much. And also explained that they cannot charge people who are requesting records. They can't charge for, quote, reviewing the records. They can't charge for redacting the records. Those are all parts of our law that have been established for decades. And they can't charge duplicative costs. There's all sorts of ways that they try to get out of this public records request. And school districts do this all the time, and cities do this, and counties do this. If they don't want to turn over a record, they come up with this just laundry list of reasons why they can't give you the record. And most of the times, that's not true. The law in Wisconsin it's called a presumption of openness, that meetings should be open except in very limited circumstances, and public records should be available to everyone except in very, very limited circumstances. And to the extent there are costs, those costs can be charged in very limited and narrow circumstances. And so the public has a right to know, because how can we vote in our elections if our government and our elected officials are hiding things from us? And so I have advocated for many years that the legislature really needs to get much more involved in our public records law and our public records reform, and they need to get rid of location costs, because there are parents around the state right now who are desperately trying to learn what's going on in their schools, but the schools are not turning over information. Schools won't even give a list of the books that are in the library right now. Schools won't even give you a copy of the curriculum. schools won't give you lesson plans because, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this will cost $5,000, and you can't afford that for us to go through our records. We need to get rid of this. We need to crack this code and allow parents and taxpayers to learn about what's going on in their public schools by getting rid of location costs and other unnecessary fees that our law allows right now.
So I have a couple questions with regard to location costs. So you're suggesting that perhaps our legislators, our Republican legislators, should take this up, craft a bill to eliminate location costs in the state of Wisconsin.
I don't know why we wouldn't, because our tax dollars are already paying for these people. Why should the public pay twice? So I'm a taxpayer, and I pay for the mayor of Wausau to be in his job. And then I ask the mayor of Wausau for his emails, and then I have to pay for him to search his own emails that are public records and the records that are owned by the public. That seems like a duplicative, and that's like an extra tax. If we'd like to have fewer taxes in the state, I'd say getting rid of location costs would be the easiest thing to do. There are ways to lessen the burden on states or localities, counties, school boards that have to deal with public records requests, but the way is not to charge the taxpayer for records that belong to him or her in the first place.
I'm looking forward to contacting my legislators to have this conversation, so thank you for the suggestion. So my other question has to do with the level of outrage in the Sun Prairie School District. Are parents rising up? Are there parents that are concerned enough where they perhaps might challenge some of the school board members? And I guess my other part two of this question is, are school board members adequately outraged, and are they backing the parents and these four young girls with regard to the situation?
No, they're not on the school board side. There's no support at all for these four girls. One of the school board members they have a student school board member who's on the board, and yeah. he blamed the girls. He said, why were they looking at this naked man? Why weren't they minding their own business? And so, yeah, there is a lot of blame the victim going on. There are other school board members who have come out publicly and said, well, we don't really know what went on in this shower. We weren't there. We don't know who the witnesses are. Well, the girls are witnesses. The girls know what they saw, and the girls reported what they saw. And somehow what this mantra of believe all women that used to be popular 5 years ago is no longer popular anymore when you put a transgender person into the mix, that you can't believe women anymore. And the people who used to be called feminists are not feminists anymore, and it's the conservatives that are taking up the rights of girls and women. So yeah, there's very little support on the school board, and there is some outrage in the public, but it is a portion of Dane County that is very blue, and most of the voters in there do support radical gender ideology in the classroom, critical race theory, all sorts of things that are basically undoing our culture right now. And there's a wide support in Dane County for this sort of thing. So I feel bad for the small group of conservatives that are trying to keep their kids in school there and have to confront this evil every day.
Recipe for disaster. Evidently, the Me Too movement is dead, and that's the new reality of 2023. Well, Dan Lennington, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope you'll keep me posted on any updates with regard to this particular incident. There's always something, and we have to be constant guard dogs against the left.
Will do. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.